Hey, what's going on, you guys? I want to go ahead and now, since we finished talking about civil rights movement, I want to now get into deeper about the idea of stereotypes and prejudice. All right, make sure we have a better understanding of that. All right, so just listen up. You can just take notes as you feel is needed, and then you guys will have some assignments to do and watch a couple of videos as well. All right, let's get started. And I'll make this a link to this also on my YouTube channel. All right, so first, just some initial thoughts. It would be nice if all humans beings never use stereotypes of prejudice. It would be nice if also social psychologists could figure out a way of reducing, even eliminating stereotypes of prejudice behavior. However, we know this is not true. If you look at things going on right now with COVID-19, there's a lot of prejudice stereotypes being towards Asian American or Asian immigrants that's in the United States and around the world. And if you go back to far as the United States, dating back to even most recently, as far as I know how a lot of my students are working this in 2020, Trayvon Martin, as far as prejudice and stereotypes as well. It'd be nice if we could educate the public about the falsehoods and some of the bad ideas that we have of prejudice. So the goal of this small short lecture is to do so. All right. Why am I a pessimist? People don't stereotype because they're stupid. They sometimes have much to gain. First thing they can gain is power. All right. Stereotypical beliefs, often implicit, hard to control, often unconscious, despite our best intentions. Okay. Stereotypes are often, although not always, linked to a very silent visual cues that are difficult to overlook. Ironic effects of stereotypes, suppression attempts. Exceptions are often subcategorized, leaving the original category-based beliefs unchanged. Evidence also shows that stereotypes change in the laboratory may or may not be long-lasting. So that's all the called about the rubber band metaphor. So you bend a rubber band, it changes as far as how long it gets. However, you put it back, it's still that same rubber band. Well-meaning, conscience-raising programs to curb prejudice are often preaching to the choir, meaning that people are the ones that you're talking to change the idea of what is a stereotype are the ones that's typically already mindful, at least are awake or alert of the idea that is a problem and that is an issue. Okay. All right. So stereotyping, appropriate biases are rational thinking. Are there cases in which that it is okay to use stereotypes? I want to give you a second to think about that. All right. Are there cases in which it's okay to use stereotypes? Take a second. We're going to talk about this. All right, so hopefully now you came up with your ideas. So let's talk a little bit more about what is a stereotype by a clinical definition, all right? And again, this is more so coming from the idea of a social scientist. So a stereotype is a widely held but fixed and oversimplified image or idea of a particular type of person or thing. So quote, the stereotype of the woman as a carrier. That's a stereotype. Again, let me say this again. A widely held but fixed and oversimplified image or idea of a particular type of person or thing. So again, it's meaning you have an image of a person that's oversimplified and you have an idea of who this particular type of person is. That is a stereotype. So the big caveat, just because people say it's inappropriate to dislike people on the basis of their membership in certain categories doesn't mean they're not actually doing this all the time. Important factor, activation and use of stereotypes. Prejudice is often at the implicit, unaware level. Again, most people are not even aware that they are literally living and perceiving life as formed by prejudice or stereotypes. So, in terms of predicting behavior, these explicit appropriateness ratings could have limited validity. You can't predict how people are going to view things because, again, these sometimes can be preconceived notions that they already have. All right. So now, The Nature of Prejudice, written by Alport in 1954. So based on some old research, quote, the human mind must think with the aid of categories. Once formed, categories are the basis of normal prejudgments. We cannot possibly avoid this process. Orderly living depends on it. So we all live in a level of prejudice every single day. We all have them. It's just the way we act out on them, which then becomes into races or other isms as far as actions. Okay? The perspective suggesting that stereotypes may be natural, not necessarily dysfunction or even more, but but validity is the bottom line. So we all know that there is actually prejudice regardless of how we want to look at it. So let's talk about now unconscious prejudice becomes more prominent. Take a second look at this graph. Okay, so what you see here is 1960, 1970, as far as implicit meaning is done intentional and compared to unconscious. If you see here, between 1990 and 2001, it went up a lot. The question is why? Well, here's the why. Resource competition, historical events, rewards for self-care. Resource competition. Who has the resources that we all want? Be it as far as education, you can make that could be a resource. Money, things of that nature. Historical events. Again, let's go back to the idea of Trayvon Martin, his death, Eric Garner, all those events. And even right now, we talk about the COVID-19. We talk in March 2020. How does that affect things as well? And then also rewards for self. Now, commonly, the effects is this right here. The New York Yankees versus St. Louis Cardinals. These are two baseball teams. If you guys know me well enough, I love baseball. So, talk about prejudice. Well, all New York Yankees fans are very, very snotty. All St. Louis Cardinals fans, they are the best fans ever in the world. Well, have you ever been to a St. Louis Cardinal game? Have you spoke to a lot of New York Yankees fans? So why are you having these pressures against them when you haven't even really met a lot of them? That kind of goes into what we're talking about. All right. Let's look at this real quick. Some more quotes. Because people typically want to maintain positive self-regard, they are motivated to have favorable evaluations of the group to which they belong. Okay? But there is no objective yardstick for gauging the desirable of any particular social groups. Such comparisons are inherently subjective. Therefore, people enhance their own group favorability by psychologically establishing its relative superiority in comparison with some outgroup. Hope you guys are getting this. Thus, people are motivated by accentuate and evaluative differences between the in-group and the out-group. So again, the whole idea is about who is in, who is out, and that's where you base a lot of your prejudice and stereotypes coming from. All right, so unconscious prejudice. I'm not a racist. Again, that goes to the idea of like being unconscious. You're not really understanding that. We're not going to watch this video here because it's really not that great. I'm in the process of trying to find another one. If that's the case, I'll make sure I'll make a link available for you. But let's go ahead and look at Cooper's ethical decision-making model. What Cooper's ethical decision-making model is, it really kind of gives us a model to how to make better decisions as far as humans. When we make these decisions, everything should work better. So provides a way to design a series of questions to guide public administrators in a systemic examination of very difficult ethical dilemmas. His decision-making model involves a series of very back-looping steps, but it's very, very straightforward. First, describe the problem. Kind of makes sense, right? Then define the ethical issues. What are the problems that's ethically the issue? Identify alternative courses of actions. Then project possible consequences, and then find the best fit. When you find the best fit, you want to incorporate the idea of utilitarianism. Greatest good for the greatest number. All right? So, let's look at March 27, 2020. We're in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic, and a lot of schools and everything is closed. So the problem, do we open the schools? ethical issue. Do we open the schools because we want to have the students to go back to learn, or do we open the schools because some other reason? Identify alternative courses of action. Well, one obvious one is keep the schools closed and allow teachers to do virtual learning. Possible consequences. Some students may not be able to eat lunch. Some students, as far as right now, you got a lot of seniors that are not enjoying their senior year. Now, you make a selection based on utilitarian. You want to make sure whatever decision you make is for the greatest good for the greatest number. So now I'm going to act as if I am our governor here in Georgia. Well, should we open the school? Should we keep them closed? I'm going to say we're going to keep them closed at this particular time. We're going to still allow for parents and those that need lunches to come by and pick up lunches at various sites around the school. And we will still ask teachers to continue the virtual learning. That way everybody stays healthy. That is the process in which how you make an ethical decision. All right, so now let's go ahead and look at this first video right here. We'll talk about utilitarianism. Hope this helps you guys out.
Should Batman kill the Joker? If you were to ask the Dark Knight himself with his hard and fast no-killing rule, he'd say absolutely not. Actually, in fact, he would say, absolutely not. When you think about it, dude is pretty Kantian in his ethics. Regardless of what Joker does, there are some lines that good people do not cross. And for Batman, killing definitely falls on the wrong side of that line. But let's be real here. Joker is never gonna stop killing. Sure, Batman will have him thrown back in Arkham, but we all know that he's gonna get out. He always gets out, and once he's free, he will kill again, and maim, and terrorize. And when he does, won't a little bit of that be Batman's fault? Batman has been in a position to kill the Joker hundreds of times. He has had the power to save anyone from ever being a victim of the Joker again. If you have the ability to stop a killer and you don't, are you morally pure because you didn't kill? Or are you morally dirty because you refused to do what needs to be done? So, why do I describe Batman as Kantian? Well, the school of thought laid out by 18th century German philosopher Immanuel Kant, now known as Kantianism, is pretty straightforward. More precisely, it's absolute. Kantianism is all about sticking to the moral rule book. There are never any exceptions or any excuses for violating moral rules. And our man Batman tries his hardest to stick to his code, no matter what. But there are other ways of looking at ethics, like instead of focusing on the intent behind our behavior, what if we pay more attention to the consequences? One moral theory that does this is utilitarianism. It focuses on the results or consequences of our actions and treats intentions as irrelevant. Good consequences equal good actions in this view. So what's a good consequence? Modern utilitarianism was founded in the 18th century by British philosophers Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill, but the theory has philosophical ancestors in ancient Greek thinkers such as Epicurus. All of these guys agreed that actions should be measured in terms of the happiness or pleasure that they produce. After all, they argued happiness is our final end. It's what we do everything else for. Think about it like this. Many things that you do for the sake of something else. You study to get a good grade, you work to get money. But why do you want good grades or money? There are different answers we could give, like maybe we're seeking affirmation for our intelligence or the approval of our parents or a degree that will give us a career that we want. But why do we want that particular career? Why do we want approval? We can keep asking these questions, but ultimately our answer will bottom out in, I want what I want because I think it will make me happy. That's what we all want. It's one of the few things everyone has in common. And utilitarians believe that's what should drive our morality. Like Kant, utilitarians agree that a moral theory should apply equally to everyone, but they thought the way to do that was to ground it in something that's really intuitive. And there's really nothing more basic than the primal desire to seek pleasure and avoid pain. So it's often said that utilitarianism is a hedonistic moral theory. This means the good is equal to the pleasant, and we ought morally to pursue pleasure and happiness and work to avoid pain. But utilitarianism is not what you'd call an egoistic theory. Egoism says that everyone ought morally to pursue their own good. In contrast to that, utilitarianism is other-regarding. It says that we should pursue pleasure or happiness, not just for ourselves, but for as many sentient beings as possible. To put it formally, We should act always so as to produce the greatest good for the greatest number. This is known as the principle of utility. Okay, so no one's going to argue with a philosophy that tells them to seek pleasure. But sometimes doing what provides the most pleasure to the most people can mean that you have to take one for the team. It can mean sacrificing your pleasure in order to produce more good overall. Like when it's your birthday and your family says you can choose any restaurant you want. The thing that would make you happiest is Thai food, but you know that that would make the rest of your family miserable. So when you choose Chinese, which is nobody's favorite, but everybody can make do, then you've thought like a utilitarian. You've chosen the action that would produce the most overall happiness for the group, even though it produced less happiness for you than other alternatives would have. The problem is, for the most part,
now, ladies and gentlemen, this is huge because sometimes it means to actually really encompass the idea of what is utilitarian means that you really have to make a decision that may actually hurt you immediately because you're looking at the greatest good for the greatest number. You're not part of that greatest number. And this is what makes it very hard to do for humans. So keep this in mind in all of your work and you think about this, making decisions. Can I make sure that it helps benefit my whole family, maybe in a case like me as being a father, while I might be sacrificed? So I'll give you guys an example. My wife brought me a gift card to buy some tennis shoes. Nice gesture. And she said specifically, I need you to make sure you use this for yourself because you always buy everything for all of us. And what did I do? I went and used that gift card and bought something for my family. That's just what it is because I see it as if they're happy, I'll be all right because I have tons of shoes already it is. But my son needs shoes because he's starting basketball. So these are kind of things you look as far as examples of like, are you making these kind of decisions? Okay. And if you're making these kind of decisions, the idea of prejudice and stereotypes and even racism will be limited. So this is a way we actually can fix this problem.
We're all our own biggest fans. We each come preloaded with a bias in favor of our own interests. This isn't necessarily a bad thing. Caring about yourself is a good way to promote survival. But where morality is concerned, utilitarians argue as special as you are no more special than anybody else. So your interests count, but no more than anyone else's. Now, you might say you agree with that. I mean, we all like to think of ourselves as being generous and selfless. But even though I'm sure you are a totally nice person, you have to admit that things seem way more important, weightier, higher stakes, when they apply to you rather than to some stranger. So utilitarians suggest that we make our moral decisions from the position of a benevolent and disinterested spectator. Rather than thinking about what I should do, they suggest that I consider what I would think if I were advising a group of strangers about what they should do. That way, I have a disposition of goodwill, but I'm not emotionally invested, and I'm a spectator rather than a participant. This approach is far more likely to yield a fair and unbiased judgment about what's really best for the group. Now, to see utilitarianism put to the test, let's pop over to the thought bubble for some flash philosophy. 20th century British philosopher Bernard Williams offered this thought experiment. Jim is on a botanical expedition in South America when he happens upon a group of 20 indigenous people and a group of soldiers. The whole group of indigenous people is about to be executed for protesting their oppressive regime. For some reason, the leader of the soldiers offers Jim the chance to shoot one of the prisoners since he's a guest in their land. He says that if Jim shoots one of the prisoners, he'll let the other 19 go. But if Jim refuses, then the soldiers will shoot all 20 protesters. What should Jim do? More importantly, what would you do? Williams actually presents this case as a critique of utilitarianism. The theory clearly demands that Jim shoot one man so that 19 will be saved. But Williams argues no moral theory ought to demand the taking of an innocent life. Thinking like a Kantian, Williams argues that it's not Jim's fault that the head soldier is a total dirtbag, and Jim shouldn't have to get literal blood on his hands to try and rectify the situation. So although it sounds pretty simple, utilitarianism is a really demanding moral theory. It says we live in a world where sometimes people do terrible things, and if we're the ones who happen to be there and we can do something to make things better, we must, even if that means getting our hands dirty. And if I sit by and watch something bad happen when I could have prevented it, my hands are dirty anyway. So Jim shouldn't think about it as killing one man. That man was dead already because they were all about to be killed. Instead, Jim should think of his decision as doing what it takes to save 19. And Batman needs to kill the Joker already. Thanks, Thought Bubble. Now, if you decide you want to follow utilitarian moral theory, you have options, specifically 2 of them. When Bentham and Mill first proposed their moral theory, it was in a form now known as act utilitarianism, sometimes called classical utilitarianism. And it says that in any given situation, you should choose the action that produces the greatest good for the greatest number, period. But sometimes the act that will produce the greatest good for the greatest number can seem just wrong. For instance, suppose a surgeon has 5 patients all waiting for transplants. One needs a heart, another a lung, 2 are waiting for kidneys, and the last needs a liver. The doctor is pretty sure that these patients will all die before their names come up on the transplant list, and he just so happens to have a neighbor who has no family, total recluse. I've been a very nice guy. The doctor knows that no one would miss the guy if he were to disappear, and by some miracle, the neighbor is a match for all 5 of the transplant patients. So it seems like, even though this would be a bad day for the neighbor, an act utilitarian should kill the neighbor and give his organs to the 5 patients. It's the greatest good for the greatest number. Yes, 1 innocent person dies, but 5 innocent people are saved. This might seem harsh, but remember that pain is pain regardless of who's experiencing it. So the death of the neighbor would be no worse than the death of any of those patients dying on the transplant list. In fact, it's 5 times less bad than all 5 of their deaths. So thought experiments like this one led some utilitarians to come up with another framework for their theory. This one is called rule utilitarianism. This version of the theory says that we ought to live by rules that, in general, are likely to lead to the greatest good for the greatest number. So yes, there are going to be situations where killing an innocent person will lead to the greatest good for the greatest number. But rule utilitarians want us to think long-term and on a larger scale. And overall, a whole society where innocent people are taken off the streets to be harvested for their organs is going to have a lot less utility than one where you don't have to live in constant fear of that happening to you. So rule utilitarianism allows us to refrain from acts that might maximize utility in the short run and instead follow rules that will maximize utility for the majority of the time. As an owner of human organs, this approach might make sense to you. But I still gotta say, if Batman were a utilitarian of either kind, it wouldn't look very good for the Joker. Today, we learned about utilitarianism. We studied the principle.
All right, so hopefully that helps you guys out as far as utilitarianism. It's a lot of material there, but it's also really kind of gives you guys the idea of saying, look, you make decisions not because it benefits me the most, but because it may actually help others out. And that's the heart of making these ethical decisions. And if you make these kind of decisions, hopefully things will get better. So now, what I want you guys to do, I'm going to show you guys another clip. It's from a film clip called The Lunch Date. And I want you guys to really pay attention to everything, okay? Because this is going to be detailed. Last video, we're almost going to be done, okay? So I want you guys to answer these questions here. What is your impression of the woman at the beginning? What makes you think this? Remember, we talk about prejudice and stereotypes, particularly unconscious prejudice and stereotypes. Was the bump, quote unquote, an accident? Who caused it? Why did the woman think she didn't have enough money to pay for the salad? What is your impression of the woman's behavior when she thinks her salad has been taken from her? And then how and why did your impression of her change over the course of the video? Okay, so now let's get ready to watch The Lunch Date. Let's get started.
No, please don't touch it. I'll take care of those. No. All right, let me give you a hand. No, don't. No. You're making me miss my train.
How you doing? You know who it is, one and only. I know who you are. Hot dog. You know I know who you is. How you doing? Happy New Year. May God bless you.
Yeah, happy preconceived. How much is this salad?
$2.
Well, I'm not sure that I have that much. $1. Here's some more. Here's some more.
All right, $1.52. There you go, lady.
Thank you. Napkin.
Okay.
Pay attention, you guys. Notice that everything is happening right here. Eyes open.
That's my salad. That's my salad. Thank you. Thank you.
You notice anything?
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Anybody got anything to interject? Can you make some change? Please, man. Stop.
All right, so that was the lunch date. So let's go back. Remember, the questions that you're answering for this particular case here are, what is your impression of the woman at the beginning? What makes you think this? Was the bump an accident? Who caused it? Why did the woman think she didn't have enough money to pay for the salad? What is your impression of the woman's behavior when she thinks her salad has been taken from her? And then how and why did your impressions of her change over the course of the video? Okay, so make sure you guys answer those questions. Then what I want you guys to do, ignore this part where it says reach up to level you're not. What you guys will actually do is sign into your vocabulary counts and watch this video here, Perspectives on Race. I actually will play for you guys as well momentarily. And then what you guys want to do, after you guys finish this, you're going to do an AEIOU to make sure you guys do your analysis. So remember, the A stands for write down any kind of adjectives that comes from the video. The E, tell me what kind of emotions you got. The I is anything you find interesting in the video. The O is something that makes you say oh. And then the U is something that makes you question or All right. Thereafter, what you guys want to do is going to write a little journal entry. And again, all this is going to be submitted on Google Classroom. Describe examples of prejudice behavior from the lunch date video and from your own life. Do you think these acts were conscious or unconscious? Utilize everything we talked about in this mini lecture. Then describe examples from your own life of acceptance, trustworthy behavior, and untrustworthy behavior, okay? So go ahead and make sure you guys knock this out. Make sure you submit this by the due dates posted in Google Classroom. And also make sure you guys post your assignment also in Google Classroom as a Google Doc. Here is the video on Perspectives of Race. After this, we are done. If you have any kind of questions, make sure you guys let me know via Google Classroom. Any kind of comments, also do that. I'm going to have a video for both the Utilitarianism, also the lunch date, also posted on my YouTube channel with the video. All right, you guys, here we go, Perspectives on Race, and hope you guys was able to get more understanding on both the idea of what is prejudice and also stereotypes.
Yeah, I'm 24 years old, but I'm gonna bring it back to my school days for a second, you know? Yeah. He's probably good at math, he probably aced the class. He probably never kissed a girl, he probably smells of trash. They saw him walking past the lockers, all the kids would laugh. Any given chance, the kids would call him Jackie Chan. But what if he was actually mad and he was from Japan? And what if actually that was me? I'm actually in the rap. My favorite thing is music, I'm bad at that. But every day I come to class and all the girls think I'm the coolest. I have a friend, he's Cuban, Cuban. My other friend is Jewish. But giving all these labels to my friends is pretty useless. We're all connected, every color, creed, race, and sex. The only way I gain perspective if my judgment laid the rest. Cause all we want is some respect. They put that on my name. I'm falling every day to be the hottest in the game. My skin and face will never change. It's just the way I'm made. I know that every life is beautiful. I'll never be ashamed. Yeah.
My hair nappy, that my skin golden. My mom white, my dad black, so I don't know where to fit. They say I'm mixed, so I gotta be that to be this. Can't they ask me about my dreams or where I plan to be next? For real, I hate the fact they say I'm pretty for a black girl. Always wanna touch my hair when I'm rocking natural hair. When it's black anyway, I thought it was a color. We come in many shapes, unique and different from each other. We're all beautiful. Look up in the mirror, tell yourself that you're a star. Never let somebody make you feel like you are perfect just the way you are. Yeah, just the way you are. Yeah, I know this is a hard topic. Don't let other people define you. Be true to yourself.
Ivory complexion, but she didn't notice. At 9 years old, penning prose, being that little poet. Knew her brothers were her brothers, couldn't really see color until she saw the world and the scope of it made her shudder. Privilege handed out like brains on a test, but only handed to humans with pale flesh. Someone's right to a gene shouldn't be stifled by greed. Seeing systematic oppression made her fall to her knees. While that girl grew up and she started to teach, to break the silence, break the cycle, kept her heart to the streets. 20 years later, she's still using art in her speech, still preaching peace. That little poet. And when they ask me where I'm from, I tell them that I'm from planet Earth. The only place I've been since my mother gave me birth. Government categorized society, made it worse. Separated people all over the world, taking their turf. And if you ask me my race, I might run. Obama ran for president, running this fight fun. Either African American, Africa's not in America, or black, which is a color. And I'm not one, but they tell me check one on applications. Instead of race, you should judge me as a person. Proud to be black, but play my race called smarter. Race is a tool they use to divide and conquer.
We're all beautiful. Look up in the mirror, tell yourself that you're a star. Never let somebody make you feel like you are perfect just the way you are. Yeah, just the way you are. Just the way you are. Never let them make you feel perfect just the way you are. Just the way you are. Never let them make you feel like you're not perfect just the way you are.
All right, you guys. So just remember for that video, do the AEIOU on perspectives on race. You guys also can view that on Google Classroom. No matter what, I hope this helps you guys out as far as understanding the idea of prejudice and stereotypes, particularly because we just finished talking about the idea of what's going on with the civil rights movement. And remember, no matter what, you're great, you're beautiful, and you're awesome, and you rock because Dr. Tidwell said so. Love y'all. Peace.